Welcome to another episode of Dentistry Talks, the show where we explore stories and experiences that translate into the world of dentistry. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Cat Capon, a passionate advocate for sustainability and conservation, to discuss why we should and can care for the future of this planet. Cat will share insights on why sustainability should matter to everyone and practical ways that dental teams can make eco-conscious decisions both in their professional and personal lives. We'll also explore how incorporating natural elements into dental practice design can enhance patient and staff wellbeing. Cat will also touch on her own experiences adapting to motherhood, overcoming loneliness post-children, and finding balance as a working mother in a demanding career. Stay tuned, this is an essential listen for anybody in dentistry. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Very excited.
I'm excited. We're going to be talking about a few things today, actually, but I wanted to start off on the sustainability side of things, if that's okay with you. I think the word sustainability is used a lot, and a lot of people can maybe, what are people going to tell me I need to do now? What else can I know about sustainability? The world is burning. What else can we do? Is there any point in actually making a change? Before we go into that, sounds quite depressing. I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, why should people care?
It's a great question, Gabby. I guess sustainability, absolutely, as you said, it has that kind of eye roll connotation to it sometimes, where people feels a bit worthy, feels a bit like you said, like you're going to tell me to do less stuff that I like, or that I have to make dramatic changes in my life, or that I should stop doing things. So funny enough, when I got into the sustainability space, and from my kind of passion of wildlife and conservation, one of the things that I wanted to do was kind of step away from that idea that sustainability has to have a negative negative effect on your life, if you like. So one of the things that I was really passionate about actually was eco-travel and eco-tourism, because I thought that actually that as a sustainability metric was really good, because people naturally excited about travel, right?
Of course.
Most people, really look forward to their summer holiday. They spend a significant amount of their salary on going away, but
That's
actually really small swaps in that instance can make a huge difference. So what I'm hopefully trying to do and excited about is putting a slightly different hat on sustainability and making it accessible, but also not necessarily stuff that you can't do or you shouldn't do. It's just these little switches and swaps, which are hopefully really simple but have such a big impact, especially if we all do it.
Yeah.
And why should people care? It's a great question. I guess if you care about the future generations, we have to care, because what we're doing, the human population is growing hugely. We are all using resources extractively, and we have finite amounts of resource on this planet. So if we are using more resources than the planet has, inevitably future generations are going to suffer for that. I weirdly, or maybe the scientist in me has actually always cared about that, but absolutely since having kids of my own, I am now hugely committed to this. And you mentioned about sort of maybe people feeling a little bit paralyzed, if you like, about getting stuck, about what can you do. And also maybe sometimes getting frustrated at the waiting for governments or big corporates to take the action, and they can be slow and they're not. But what I like to say about that is that every single person has a vote, and you vote with your credit card or your mobile phone when you tap. Like every time you make a transaction and a payment, you are voting for something. So really choose wisely. Every time you make a card payment, are you giving it to a brand, an organization, a supermarket that is taking sustainability seriously? And if you care about it, you have the power with that one vote. So every time you're doing a transaction, just have a think, is this the right brand?
Very good way to think
for the
of
future.
Yeah. I think there's two camps there, right? So there's people who are perhaps just hugely cynical. I don't want to say are necessarily deniers of climate change, but just a bit like, we're exaggerating. It's kind of intending to make people feel terrible about the way they live their life, this isn't really that big of a problem. Then you've got the other people who think this isn't actually going to do anything in the world, like kind of how I said the world is burning, what difference am I going to make? Just to caveat it, I think sustainability is really important. I was essentially just playing devil's advocate in that question. I just wanted to clarify that. Not that it actually matters, but I just don't want you to think
drilling oil.
Yeah, exactly. I just needed to make that very clear for my own sanity for the next 45 minutes. But yeah, so there are different people perhaps won't take action for different reasons. But I think you've just made a really good point there about just maybe using and spending your money with intention and putting a bit of thought behind it before making a transaction. I don't know, I've never thought of it like that, so simply. And
I think it makes individuals feel powerful. Like it just gives us the power and the cards. Of course, individuals can only go so far, but individuals can make huge change if we all do these small things. So give the power of your wallet is one thing that I really will. People sort of sometimes talk about eco anxiety and things like that, and I say every time that transaction is happening, just check that you're happy where that money's going, and is it the most sustainable brand you can find, and if not, a bit of research. It's quite easy and quick, especially with AI now. You can quite quickly see which brands are doing the most for the planet.
This is I guess the beauty of the internet is there's a wealth of information out there which can be really informative and help you make better decisions. Obviously there's some other effects that it can have on you that are perhaps less beneficial and perhaps more destructive, but we won't go into that right now. But you're right, there are these tools to use if you feel that you want to be living more sustainably and make better choices. Use them to find out where you can better spend your money or live differently. I would love to know a bit about you. Obviously you've got a really amazing career working in a very unique area that I feel people don't hear enough about, particularly from a woman, if you don't mind me saying that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I know we touched on that briefly in our conversation before you came on today. So for those listening and watching, would you mind just giving us a brief overview about what it is you do?
It's so funny because it's one of those things. I've definitely had a very wiggly career, and when people say like, "What do you do? What are you?" I find it really hard sometimes to like put a sticker on it, if that makes sense. I guess the one thing that I have always done, and the kind of one purpose that I have always tried to kind of continue throughout my career is that I wanted to inspire people to fall in love with the wild places that we have and the wild animals that we have on this planet. So that has been the kind of thread that has kept me through my career. And I've done it in all sorts of ways, from presenting shows to working with scientific teams doing research on it, to working with charities, all sorts of guises. So, sometimes I'm called a naturalist, sometimes I'm called an adventurer, sometimes I'm called a presenter, all different things. But that kind of thread has been the thing that has run through. And so I, from a super young age, was just in me from a really young age, was obsessed with Sir David Attenborough. Sir David Attenborough was my hero. Watched hours. Oh my gosh, he's just wonderful, man. Hours and hours of documentaries with him. I grew up in London, so I was not exposed to, a super urban area, wasn't exposed to wildlife. So that was the way that I got passionate about the natural world, and was just so moved by what I saw on TV and just really inspired to maybe go and visit some of these places one day, and just the wonders that existed out there that I never really got to see on a, I was lucky if I saw a pigeon or a fox. But I did. I mean, it's so interesting because it's so funny how I think kids will always find a way. So in the playground, I would be that kid that would like find beetles and bugs, and I would put them in like pots and bring them home, and my poor mum would like end up, I had like a mini beast set up in my bedroom, which she was not a fan of.
Very tolerant.
She was tolerant. Yeah. And to be fair, I give her credit. Like, she definitely didn't discourage it, even though she probably was rolling her eyes at everything that was coming into the house.
That's so funny.
She didn't discourage that passion in me. And so then I went on to study zoology at Imperial College, which was a super difficult university to get into.
Really
but
impressive.
I was like, laser focused.
Absolutely.
I really, really want to make this happen, following the footsteps of some of my heroes. And And there it was a wonderful university, learnt so much about the theory of it, but I was still kind of itching to actually go and see it. Like, the theory's all great, learning the scientific theory of all of this stuff, reading from books and, sitting in a lecture theatre seeing slides. But I was just itching to kind of see these places in real life. So in my third year, I got the opportunity to study bats in Honduras.
Wow.
And it was a really awesome, like, genuinely life-changing experience for me, because as a London girl who had grown up with, like, convenience all around me, comfort all around me, being dropped, if you like, into the middle of the cloud forest in Honduras for 3 months.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, with, like, because it was such a highly protected area, we weren't allowed to take in any shampoo, any soap. We could take, like, certain things that were, like, organic in nature, but we couldn't take anything that was going to affect the ecosystem. So essentially 3 months of not washing my hair, cooking on a fire every night, putting up a hammock, sleeping in a hammock, just was so alien to me, because it was just something I'd never experienced. But actually, don't get me wrong, it definitely took me a while to settle into that. I had a couple of challenges in the early days.
Yeah, I bet.
Being bitten by mosquitoes and uncomfortable, and
also hammock. I think
sleeping in a hammock.
Did you
tough.
like it? No, I think I flip around a lot, so I think I'd end up, like, it wouldn't work for me.
Yeah,
but it's just getting comfy. I guess you have to just accept you're going to be a back sleeper maybe when
and the slight wiggle it takes a while. I have to say, first night was horrific. I did exactly that. I rolled out, ripped my mosquito net, landed on the forest floor, sobbing, because I realised that down the mosquitoes, that was it. For 3 months I was going to get bitten every night.
Yeah, of course.
There was no, I tried to kind of stick it together, but it didn't really work.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first night was horrific, but actually slowly I just loved it, and I would say it's probably some of the best sleep I ever had in my life, because I think that is those natural noises and sounds of the forest and wildlife is what we evolved to hear. And so there's something like hardwired in our brains, I think, to really just sink into ourselves and really feel.
Absolutely. There's a reason why people pay money for sounds like that.
Yeah.
to come out of their Alexa at home or whatever it is that's playing it. So yeah, totally. But it probably does come back to something a bit more maybe primal.
Yeah.
And that's, like you said, that's
and so much less distraction, if that makes sense. Like I thought, I'm going to get so bored. I'm going to get so bored in the, not having any TV to watch. We couldn't even take any books really, because, our packs were we had to be so rigorous with what we brought into the forest and carrying them for 10 hours. Because I thought, I'm not going to have any TV, no books. We couldn't even take books in the packs because we were walking 10 hours with, like, everything that we needed for 3 months. So we couldn't take things like books. But actually, I was never bored, and it was just, you'd just be fascinated by stuff that you'd never even notice in, like, urban life. Like, I could literally sit and watch, like, a hummingbird, like, drinking nectar for
incredible.
Like an hour.
Yeah.
And I was just fascinated, and it was that type of level of awe that I find it really hard to describe, because I think you have to sort of really sink into that jungle life. And actually, weirdly, when I came out of the jungle and I came back to the UK and back to London, I actually found that transition also a huge struggle. Like, really? I then felt like I was getting really overstimulated with the sound of, like, traffic.
Actually,
and
I can
so
see
many
how
people.
that would happen.
But it's amazing how quickly we adapt as human beings to these different environments, and that moment, that trip, set the course for the rest of my life, to be honest, because when I was there, I was awestruck, and that word is used a lot, but it was like something. I couldn't believe how beautiful everything was, how connected everything was, how there were so many things, from huge howler monkeys to tiny insects. Amazing. It was just, and I was like, I would love more people to be able to see places like this and see why it's so important that we protect it, but also that this is just one pocket in one country, and what else is out there, in the rest of this planet to see and discover, and to kind of really fight to make sure that they stay, because urban development and encroachment and deforestation is happening everywhere. So and I felt like at that point it is my life's purpose to do this. So in every which way, this has kind of been the thread that has
I really like that.
Going.
It sounds like you've held that interest from a very young age, and it's stayed with you into adulthood and beyond to motherhood as well. And I think that's incredible, and a real sort of gift and something to hold on to, because I think not many people have such a consistent interest that they can take with them into their actual career. I mean, this is something now that, you know, is part of what you do for work, which is amazing.
It's very cool, and also very cool now that I get to show my kids too. That's
exactly.
a really new side of it. It's like, yes, I get to hopefully inspire the next generation,
which is crucial, and I guess feeds into the first point that you spoke about of why people should care, and how to inspire that in people. And, you know, this is what we can keep around. This isn't going to go extinct. This piece of land, this ecosystem isn't going to be destroyed, and there's all types of reasons why we should all care, but that's obviously at the very core of what started your interest in this area. And I have a lot of respect for that.
Thank you, it's cool.
We talk a lot about sustainability in dentistry, particularly in the dental practice environment, changes that can be made, ways to do things differently that is perhaps a bit more forward thinking and taking care of the earth a bit better. We touched earlier on mindful spending. That was a really good example of considerations that dental teams can make in their day-to-day life. But what other eco-conscious decisions can people make?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there are so many, but there are a couple that I get excited about, because I guess it also follows that train a little bit of the idea of it doesn't always have to be a negative or feel like a negative impact to your life. So one of the things that I love to promote is getting your outside space wild. Okay. So whatever it is, it might be a window box, it could be a balcony, or it could be a garden or a front yard. But one of the things that I love to focus on is trying to rewild whatever outside space you have. Because why is this important? A bit like that kind of power to the people with the spending. It's like, imagine if everyone's garden was a little bit wilder. I have a pet peeve, and I'm sorry to anyone in the audience that has this, but artificial grass is my absolute pet peeve. It's
so funny because it's so divisive.
Oh my God.
It's so, I can actually in my head split people I know into two camps based on artificial grass. I'm actually not kidding, because I understand some people say it's convenient, and then other people, I mean, we've just moved and we share a garden with our downstairs neighbours, and they are super passionate about just letting the garden kind of do what it likes within reason. You know, it's not completely uninhabitable for us to walk in. Like, we're not sort of overwhelmed with weeds as tall as I am and whatnot. But there's a lot of respect for the nature, and they put a pond in, and they're very, very, very thrilled that they once had a frog in it. It was a really big deal for them because it was something they were working towards, and they were telling us about this. And I really liked it, and it's I mean, it seems that we were quite well matched to have the garden together, because it's something that we have a lot of respect for and would like to continue that. But it's so funny you say that, because for some people it's totally not a consideration, and artificial grass is the go-to.
No, and I don't get me wrong, I get the convenience of it, but really in the UK, I mean, we're only going to need to mow a lawn, you know, for a couple of months of the year. It's not like a country that it gets, you know, real sunlight all year round to have to mow a lawn. But also, to me, it's just then you're actually it's a bed of microplastic you're putting down there. So yeah, rewilding your outside space for me feels like something that everyone can do their bit. You know, no mow maze, try and like not mow your lawn. You know, you're giving yourself a month off mowing anyway. But it's just such a great way to get pollinators back, which brings birds back. And you know, if everyone makes that one small change, like you said, any water feature, even if you have like a pot and fill it up with water, it will bring in all sorts of different types of invertebrates. So yeah, we can all do that, and I feel like that's a real. Doesn't feel like a negative thing. It feels like a really fun project.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely if you've got kids as well. Like, my kids love getting involved in like creating bird boxes or bee hotels and all of that type of stuff. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I guess, if you're traveling to conferences and things like that, maybe think about going on a more sustainable mode of transport. So if you can avoid flying, of course, that's maybe better. But also, again, what I like about that is sometimes it depends, because this is one of those things where it depends what the budget is, depends how long people have in terms of time, and sometimes flying is the only option. But if you have the time and you have the funds to go in a different mode, actually just slowing down and getting to that conference or that work event in a slightly slower, more relaxed state, I think is a really nice thing to do. And again, it doesn't feel like a trade-off in terms of one's easy and one's hard. It's a completely different experience traveling by train sometimes. And
I love trains. I would like to pretend my reluctance to take a plane is purely motivated and mainly motivated for environmental reasons. I also am terrified of getting on a plane, so that feeds into it as well. Terrified is probably a bit unfair. I get on them when I have no other way of getting to a place, because I think if I'm going to see some places in the world, I can't, get a boat over to South America, for example. I mean, I probably could, but it'd be really expensive and terrible. Take me like a month. But I love a train, and actually I think what's really interesting about what you're saying is it doesn't have to be a negative thing. So to flip it and think, what am I actually going to get from doing this? And whilst this is a completely separate conversation, I think there's a real problem with the differences in fare prices when it comes to planes and trains, and actually that disincentivizes people to get a train sometimes, because it's actually cheaper to get on a plane. When people ask me why I always get the train, I think I've got the plane once since moving to Edinburgh, down to London. I've been there over 2 years. Mine is you don't have to pay for your luggage. So if you want to take your luggage on, you save some money, because you've got to incentivize people for other reasons as well. You can do work on the train. It's just slower. You can look out the window and enjoy it. And honestly, it takes the same amount of time as if I went to the airport, went through security, and got on the plane itself. And people are like, oh, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got to sometimes, I think, give people, I don't know if you find that in what you do, but you need to give people multiple reasons.
Yeah, it's storytelling around it, because also seeing the countryside roll by and actually gazing out the window, you can't really, you can do it on a plane, but all you're going to see is clouds. I think the storytelling around, and actually it's interesting you should say that, because one of the things, when I ended my university career, there was always the opportunity for me to go into academia and to research, and I didn't go down that route, because actually it was the communication of this stuff that really inspired me, the storytelling around it, how we can tell stories to people to incentivize them to do things in a different way. And I completely agree with what you're saying. You can have logical conversations. Okay, one's better for the environment, one's not, one's cheaper, but it's the emotional journey that you have to take people on as well. So that's something that I'm still crafting and I'm still learning, but I think is so important in this space, because without that narrative, logical answers are not ever gonna help us on the whole.
It's not. And actually I think when you think of money as well, which is whether we like it or not, it's very central to people's lives. It's unfortunate sometimes that the more sustainable travel option can sometimes be more expensive. So if that's the main consideration, or at least the number one consideration, other things need to be discussed to influence. Actually, do you know what? I am going to do that, even if it's going to cost me £30-40 more, because these other reasons have outweighed the savings that I would make taking that other option. And it's not to shame people for taking the cheaper option necessarily, but it's just, if you have the capacity to be flexible with it, this is what you can gain from making that change. And I think it sounds like you're kind of leading the way with that conversation, which is
definitely
good.
I mean, I think so. We mentioned it at the beginning around ecotourism, but travel is for me one of the biggest things that I felt a passion for throughout the years. And it's also been one of my biggest criticisms, because I often get people say to me, you're saying you're an environmentalist, you're saying this, but you're also flying all around the world to see these places and these creatures. And it's true, and it's an ethical conundrum that I have come across regularly throughout my career. I guess there are a couple of things that I try to hold firm and strong on, and one is that there aren't very many other options right now. So there isn't a commercial solar aircraft. There are movements in the technology space that are pointing to the fact that we could become more sustainable in terms of kind of long haul travel. But at the moment, if I need to or want to for work to go to South America, like you said, I'm probably not going to take a month to get there by boat. I'm going to have to probably go by aircraft. we can offset those emissions. There are so many companies out there offering really good offsets, which yes is not the long-term answer, but is a good short-term fix. Sure, it's a band-aid solution. We can all do that band-aid solution. And you know, companies are offering that a lot more now for you know, work and corporate travel. But the other thing is that I just have this from more of the passion point of view. I have the idea that humans, we're a curious species, right? We will always want to go and see new places. Most people want to go and see new towns, meet new people, live in new cultures. I don't think we could ever say to people, you can't travel, you must stop traveling. No. And actually, I don't think that is a positive for becoming a global citizen. I think only by more people becoming global citizens will we really start to think of this planet as connected and one place, and it's not limited by imaginary borders. You know, we are one planet, one ecosystem. And if we can get people to experience what other people are going through in different cultures, different climates, different environments, I think it makes us become better ambassadors for our planet, to be honest. And ecotourism, of course, has the actual benefit of literally saving creatures from extinction, because if you go to somewhere like Madagascar, for example, somewhere I feel really passionately about, Madagascar is 90% deforested. There's 10% forest left in Madagascar. It is home to, I think the latest count, around 113 species of lemur. Primates, very closely related to human beings. It's one of the biggest biodiversity hotspots on the planet. It's, you know, huge deforestation loss. People are deforesting that forest because it's the second poorest country on the planet. They're deforesting the forest because they are trying to create agricultural areas for them. They're trying to feed their families. We can't tell them not to deforest the forest, because, you know, that's how they're supporting their families. That's their livelihood. However, if we come in as tourists and bring foreign dollar, they are getting hired as guides. They're getting hired as chefs in ecotourism lodges. There's a huge income stream of people that are wanting to come and see their lemurs, coming to see their wildlife. And that change in mentality from the local people they'll, you know, start to see, all right, if we protect these forests, it means more people are going to come and visit. And that mindset shift with local communities, where they see the forest as being more valuable intact and the animals alive versus cut down and dead, is such a huge mind shift. So for me, that is why ecotourism is such a positive thing, because not only can you literally save species from extinction, but you are seeing new cultures, you're seeing new parts of the world, and it's such a small switch from going to stay in a kind of carbon consumptive, all-inclusive resort, which, don't get me wrong, sometimes has its place. But if you can, or if you're open to making that switch, it has a real impact for the planet. You will have such memorable stories that you'll be able to tell, you know, everyone back home. And yes, you might have a little bit more challenge over chill time. There will be, you know, it won't be the luxury that some sort of super luxurious hotels have. You might be having to, you know, go in a local bus or, you know, rough it a bit. But those adventures and things, to me, I think makes
for sure.
travel.
I totally agree with you. And I think more people like yourself having these conversations and highlighting how these experiences are so life-changing and what they can, like you said, we naturally are curious and want to go and see different places. So we can't stop people doing that. So let's work with it and find solutions to this that will both help local communities that people are visiting as tourists and help the tourists themselves to have an enjoyable holiday, because we all want to leave, particularly the UK, which is miserable for like 80% of the year, if not more. So we all need some vitamin D, and we want to go out and get some sunshine, but it doesn't have to be sitting, like you said, in a resort every time. Not saying bulldoze them all, then that's not ever going to happen, but just change it up, because if everyone makes that change, we're better for it. I want to tap into that. You're very passionate about wildlife and the nature side of it, and actually kind of go off on a tangent slightly and talk a bit about, very random, interior design in the sense of within a dental practice. Yes. So lots of new dental practices are opening with beautiful interiors and exteriors, but inside, and really trying to make the experience a kind of holistic one for the patient and make it feel calming. You know, there are a lot of people have fear of the dentist and a phobia of even just like clinical spaces in general. So nature inevitably is something that we associate with calm and sort of peace and not chaos. In really, it's something, you spoke about the sounds that were you heard whilst trying to sleep, and we will now put those on as white noise when we're going to sleep. It's the same sort of thing. So I was wondering what your suggestions would be. Like, is this a thing? Is this something that should be tapped into by dental practices, and how can they do that successfully?
It's a great question, not one I've been asked before
ever. I'm glad.
So I love it.
Yeah.
But so I would say absolutely, because we sometimes forget that we are animals, right?
Yeah.
We separate ourselves from being animals, but we are animals, and our brains have evolved in a way where we have been in nature, evolved with nature, and only really recently have we started to sort of separate ourselves away from those natural systems. So we were talking earlier about like being sort of hardwired to relax in certain environments, and absolutely, I mean, I have noticed when I have taken people from London to these sort of more remote areas, how you can almost see their shoulders relax.
I'm not surprised by that.
And I think there's definitely things that we could do in interior environments to bring the nature in. So whether that is, as you can probably imagine, my house is completely full of houseplants, and it's basically as green on the inside as it is on the outside. But there's, loads of studies and health benefits around, how that makes people feel, but also the soundscape. Like, definitely, why not bring in a really calming soundscape, nature soundscape? I only really realised it recently, but I was reading a study about bird sound and why bird sound is so relaxing to human beings, and it's because bird sound has always been a symbol of security for us, because birds don't sing if there are predators around. So we have been hardwired to hear the sound of bird song, and it instantly makes us feel calm because birds won't sing if there's a predator around. So it gives us that level of calm, and there's no threat. So absolutely, why not have dental practices with lovely, sounds of nature, bird song, whale song, things that will really calm people down, bring plants into the space to even the colour green.
I was going to ask colour scheme wise, green is important
as a calming
as well.
effects on our brains, again, because of we've evolved in forests, we've evolved around greenery, so that instantly has a calming kind of effect on us. And even images of nature and landscapes, of course, even just photographs and paintings of, I could see that having a really calming effect. But I think we could definitely work to bring some nature into some dental practices, just to bring that level of calm before patients are being poked and prodded.
Exactly. You're calm now, we can exactly. I wanted to talk about you being a woman in this space, which it's not, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I can't imagine there's many, or there's more now. Well,
absolutely. And it is something I used to get really cross about. I used to get really, really cross about it, to be honest. It didn't really cross my mind that it would be a challenge, funnily enough, when I was at university and when I had this dream of following on in Sir David's footsteps. It didn't even cross my mind really that Sir David, he's almost so godlike. That, I didn't even really see him as he's a man, I'm a woman, so I can't follow in his footsteps.
Yeah, why would you?
And then the reality became a real thing when I sort of started to work in the TV world, and I had a couple of sort of really negative conversations around it. I went into this space feeling like I could do anything. Why can't I do this? So I auditioned. I had meetings with producers and directors, and I had conversations around things like, you don't look like an adventurer or a naturalist, so that's a problem. And I'm like, well, what does a naturalist or a adventurer look like? Do I have to be a kind of butch ex-military guy to be able to successfully survive in the rainforest, having known I've done 3 months in the rainforest, guys, I can do this. And then the other thing was around having to fire. I was also told that in previous expeditions they'd had to fire women from expeditions because they're too distracting in the field. actual conversation I had. And then another, I won't mention what channel, but another channel saying to me, the problem is our audience is male skewed and men don't like watching women do things they can't do themselves.
Oh my.
So all three of those, I came away feeling
horrible
very.
Is I probably believe that.
Yeah.
But it's just terrible that is I mean, I don't know if I do, but like you know, men can be insecure about things sometimes. So it's
test it. Do something different.
But that's not also. I don't know. Astounding that that's something that. All three of those you've had to handle in your career.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating. And then I got into a bit of a wormhole about it, and then I was sort of Googling, adventurers, naturalists, and I think back then you'd have to go through like 5 pages of Google to find a single female if you Googled like adventurer. It was really disappointing. Having, we've got amazing people like Jane Goodall and Sylvia Earle and these incredible conservationists who are female. Yeah. Having done this in the past, but never really in broadcast media, and still to this day, there's a huge skew. It's changing and it's getting better, but it's a huge skew. So I felt at first completely deflated. I felt at first like, well, again, I can't change this. This is just the way it is. And I felt a little bit like, well, I'll just be someone that does stuff behind the scenes then. I'll just be, part of the crew or be the runner or be a producer or whatever. And then it was kind of an amazing, fortuitous thing that this thing called social media happened. And, all these social media channels started coming out. And then I sort of realised, well, okay, well, why did anyone say that this story that I'm telling or this, inspiration of the wild places that we live has to be on broadcast media? Only really occurred to me because that's what Sir David had done in his time. So I thought that was the medium that I needed to go down, and actually realising with social media that I could do the same thing on these platforms, much smaller budgets, smaller crews, and still have really good impact. So that sort of, I went then down that path of creating content for social media and branded content. And and thank goodness for that fortuitous timing. But I do think, had it not, even if the social media channels and platforms hadn't, I think that drive in me, I would have found a way. Whether it was writing a book, whether it was, I would have found a way to make it happen. And I think with other women that maybe feel inspired in this space or have had similar challenges around being in industries that are male skewed, like just don't give up. And it's really hard to say because it can be exhausting. It really can. And there's been periods of my career that I've been like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. It's too many hurdles, too many challenges.
You start putting you're like, just my peace is worth more than the stress of this. Like, you just start, and then you start getting annoyed at yourself for grappling, even thinking, why should I step back? Like, you can just go back and forth forever. Yeah. So I cut yourself some slack on that front, because it's hard. And I don't even know what it's like to not only do what you do, but then to in broadcast, like you say, for the most industries, it's skewed towards men, but then add a kind of unique industry such as yours into it as well. I bet it's even, the ratios are even
definitely
worse.
They are really skewed, and it is getting better.
That's
definitely
good.
Is getting
That's
better. So I feel positive for maybe the next generation coming, that it will even up. But definitely through my time, it has been a challenge, a continual challenge. And it's just that thing of being able to problem solve and pivot and find different ways to tell the story.
I think a lot of women in dentistry can probably relate to a lot of what you've just said there. It actually is a majority female profession, which is, I don't think it's necessarily unsurprising, but perhaps a lot of opportunity that comes up in dentistry is often being capitalised on by just men, or at least being offered to men. Again, similar to yourself, it is changing, which is fantastic, and there's a lot more conversation around it, which is wonderful, and we welcome it, but we need to keep having those discussions. We can't just let them dip and disappear into the abyss, because otherwise I don't think change will take place. We need to sort of be on everybody's case, because everybody needs to be on the same page in order for it to work. It can't just be women supported. We need men and anybody else to understand why this is important for not just people's well-being, but just for the industry and profession in general. I think another thing women in dentistry can relate to is the fact that you're also a mother of 2.
I am, yeah.
And I'd like to talk a bit about that and kind of your career post children and that transition, because obviously being a parent, I mean, I say that like I don't have children, just to sort of caveat this, but it is, hats off to anybody who does have children and on top of that then juggle a career as well. It's incredibly tricky because you've just got a lot going on there, and I can barely keep myself alive. So it's really interesting. So how did that have an impact on your career and on you?
It had a huge impact. To be honest, I had an incredibly adventurous, travel-centric life pre-kids, and I maybe naively thought that it could all continue very quickly even after having kids. I sort of had this view of like, I'll just put them on my back and carry on. And the reality, of course, is not like that. But I've sort of openly talked about it because for me, the transition from being someone who was outside all the time, traveling with I was always with a team, whether it was a production team or a scientific team. I've always been in the field with a big group, and I'm a social being. I like being with other people, and then having a child at the age of 32 and going from that type of life to being completely isolated at home on my own most of the day with a non-verbal being who I love very much, but we weren't able to have any kind of conversation or anything. I found it really tough, and actually with hindsight I'm now able to recognize that it was actually like a really dark time for my mental health, and that I definitely did struggle from postpartum depression, because and it was so interesting because I thought at first I was like, oh well, this is my fault, like as in I'm a failure, I am not cut out for this, or I'm a crap mum, or all of these things were going through my head. And actually now, again with the lens of hindsight, I'm able to see that the way that our society has been constructed is not set up for success for mothers at the moment. And I felt incredibly lonely. I was at home all day on my own. I didn't feel like I had the village. They say it takes a village to raise a child. I'm like, well, where's my village? Like, where is my village? Sure. But also because I had this passion and a drive inside me, like I didn't want to give up work completely. I didn't want to be someone that would have children, and no disrespect to anyone that does decide that, but because I had this pull inside me of like, I've got to do my life's purpose. I wanted to go back to work, and then that guilt of never really feeling like you're doing either thing well. Like I'm not then doing work to its full capacity, but I'm also not doing parenting to its full capacity. And that pull both ways of feeling like a failure was incredibly hard. And it actually took me about 5 years to really recognize like how far I'd got sucked into this kind of depression, and not living in the way that I wanted to live, but actually recognizing that a couple of things, like one, that it wasn't me that had failed.
Of course.
It felt like a really kind of good thing to uncover, because it was like, well, most women in communities around the world live in villages, literal villages, and the villages are made up of their wider family. They have cousins to play with. They have mother-in-laws that are in the house or in the village to support them. But the way that we live our life in the UK and in other Western countries is so different to that, and therefore so isolating for mums. And you have to really then work to create your community in your village. And you have to join the baby groups and the mum groups to kind of then find your village and find your community. But it didn't occur to me that was going to be such a challenge that it was for me. And I would imagine sort of the mums that, there'll be many mums in the dentistry industry that probably would have had similar sort of thoughts and feelings around
100%.
this. And I think
people like yourself who, like you say, it's no disrespect to anybody who perhaps is happy to kind of put their career on pause, or even just maybe sort of cut it there and stay at home with their children for the rest of their lives. But there's a lot of people who their work is part of who they are, and it's important to protect that. And I think sometimes society can make you feel shame that you're the only thing you don't want is, because children are important, but my God, they're not the only thing in your life, and I think it's important to remember that whilst you will prioritize them to some degree. There are times when it's okay to prioritize yourself, and that's crucial to find that balance for some people, I think. 100%. But I just don't think. I don't know, women are made to feel like that's kind of, once you have a child, you need to kind of submit to this identity of mother, and that's it. And
absolutely.
That's definitely one thing that plays on my mind when I think of the future, and I think, having children, what would that look like for me? I wouldn't want it to necessarily consume me in a way that some people are fully okay with. For me, I'm not saying this is necessarily how you feel, but for me personally, I think I'd need to make sure that I have a balance of all the things in my life in order to be the best parent to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the distribution of tasks between your partner, if you're in a relationship with a partner and a child, it's ensuring that actually there's more of an even distribution, because there's such a skew again of it's the woman's role to do certain things in the household, and having to kind of really actively, and my partner's amazing, like he really, really is absolutely amazing, but there were still in the early days those kind of, that's for the mum to do, or that's the mum's job. And just having to kind of push that boundary to say, well, we both still want careers, so we're going to have to spread these tasks as well, we're going to have to spread these activities as well. So yes, it's taken quite a long journey. I went through a big kind of coaching. I went through some coaching, which I found really, really helpful, which helped me kind of surface a lot of these things around the fact that actually it wasn't me as a failure. Society has not set mums up for success. How can we change that? That the balance between parental responsibility needs to be redressed in many situations, and then actually it has now made me evolve into the next stage of my life, where actually I'm really excited now to specifically focus on mums as a demographic, as people who need that time to get back in touch with nature, to get back in touch with themselves, to relieve themselves of responsibility, even if it's for one night, and so I'm working on a project called Wild Up Slow Down, which is around which is around getting mums basically back out into nature, and hoping that my experience and some of the coaching, I've joined with Jo, my business partner, on it, who she's a coach, and she specifically looks at mothers, and sort of seeing how we can bring groups of women back into the wild, reconnect with themselves, knowing that they can't spend 3 months in Honduras to kind of find themselves and find that moment of awe, but even for one night it can make a really big difference.
And also it's something you obviously identified. There was a gap when you were in a place that wasn't, you weren't feeling fantastic, you weren't feeling yourself, you felt quite low. Well, what an amazing thing to be able to offer for those who might have perhaps experienced something similar, or maybe hadn't even got to that point yet. What you're doing can help them catch themselves before they get to that. So it sounds wonderful.
I'm hoping to break the stigma around like not talking about it and feeling like, oh, this is just me, must just be me, this is supposed to be a really natural thing, but it's not. It is a natural thing if we were set up into the right.
So we're not living in a world that, you said things in the Western world have changed hugely, and it doesn't facilitate reproduction and bringing up children very well at all.
No, it doesn't. And when you see other cultures in the world, you're like, we've moved away a bit too far.
You've been exposed to all types of living life, and I think you're right. It comes back to that, seeing other cultures. I think it helps people open people's minds and allow them to see the world differently, because we're made to think it's just one way, and there's not one way. There's very many ways to live life and be. So people like you are important to continue in those conversations. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you what the best bit of advice is that you've ever been received. It can be ever been received. You've ever received, that was phrased very badly by me, but it can be to do with what we just discussed. It can be to do with careers or conservation or anything.
There are so many wonderful pieces, but the one thing that if I was to be, really prodded on it, I would say that and it's actually I think it's a proverb, and I don't even know how it came to me, but someone once said this to me, and it has really stuck with me, that if you are busy, it is that you should try to spend at least 20 minutes in nature every day. Unless you're busy or stressed, then you should spend an hour. And it's so counterintuitive. And when I first heard it, I was like, what? But if you're busy and stressed, like you can't spend time. But it's that thing of we need to slow down to make better decisions. When you feel that your anxiety or stress levels are high because of whatever it could be that your kid has been, having a tantrum. It could be that you've got a work deadline. It could be that you've missed your train. Whatever has created that tension in your body, we have this sort of toxic trait in our society that just keep plowing on, just keep going through.
Absolutely.
And that piece of advice has really stuck with me, because I will often get overwhelmed with, it could be the fact that, like I said, trying to juggle the kids with a conference call, a Zoom call. It could be that I, need to submit something by a certain date and I'm running late, or whatever it is. And you can feel it in your body and you go, well, I've just got to get it done. You carry on. And then I haven't been outside that day. And then actually that just incrementally increases in my body. And then, you can get things like burnout episodes and things like that. So that one piece of advice I've really stuck to it, and I will try my absolute hardest wherever I am on the planet, whether I'm in an airport stopover, whether I'm, at a conference, get outside for at least 20 minutes. But if I'm feeling stressed, I'm going to take that full hour, whatever deadline I've got, because actually I'll make better decisions off the back of it. My mind will be able to prioritize better when I'm in that sort of fight or flight mode that stress kind of puts you in. So that one piece of advice has lasted with me, and I told my children, I tell my children's friends, I try and get everyone out in nature at least half an hour every day. I love that.
Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been incredibly rewarding.
I loved it. Thank you so much, Gabby. Really enjoyed it.